Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are watching this. I'm Jim Cardoso, Senior Director for the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. Welcome to our first ever virtual Transatlantic Forum on cybersecurity, and really our first virtual conference since we started up GNSI 3 years ago. I'm joined today, and we'll hear some remarks soon, by Dr. Nicolas Saboret, Director of the Graduate School of Computer Science at the University of Paris-Saclay. GNSI stood up in June of 2022 under the executive directorship of retired U.S. Marine Corps General Frank McKenzie, the former commander of the United States Central Command. Our mission is to inform decision makers, prepare the next generation of national security professionals, and enable actionable solutions. I'm very excited about the partnerships we have for today's event. First, the University of Paris-Saclay, the #1 ranked university in France for computer science, and number 12 in the academic ranking of world universities. Second, the University of South Florida's Bellini College of Artificial Intelligence, Cybersecurity, and Computing, first of its kind in the state of Florida, and a pioneer across the entire United States as an AI-focused college. Finally, the Florida Center for Cybersecurity, a national leader in state-focused cybersecurity education, research, and outreach. You'll hear from experts from all three of these organizations today. And the caption to this YouTube presentation has links to bios for all of our speakers, if you want to learn more about it. The topics of today include formal models for cybersecurity, network security in the modern era, and policy implications of evolving cybersecurity challenges. AI-empowered cyber threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated and therefore increasingly dangerous. Moreover, it affects anyone who lives in today's world with any level of modern convenience. Even as we record this on June 23rd, after the United States military struck targets in Iran, the United States Department of Homeland Security issued a notice that Iranian cyber attacks are likely to follow. Today's dialogue will shed light on cybersecurity risks and continue moving the conversation towards better understanding and actionable solutions. Again, thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Nicolas Saboret for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Nicolas Saboret. I'm a computer scientist working here at University of Paris-Saclay. And as the former director of the Graduate School of Computer Science, I'm very happy to have made this event possible because, as Jim just explained, it is very important as a topic for both our institutions, but also more generally speaking, as a research field that requires skills from different domains. And today, I think one originality of this event, apart from the fact that it is transatlantic, apart from the fact that it allows us to join knowledge and competencies from different areas, I think one of our originalities is to have researchers in very different domains of security, global and national security, and cybersecurity. So I hope the discussion in all three panels will thrill you and give you future directions for your own thoughts in the field. And I would like now to start our first panel. So the panel on formal methods, formal models for security. So it's coming up shortly. Please stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
All right. Greetings, everyone. I'm Miran Mozaffari Kermani, Associate Professor at Bellini College of AI, Cybersecurity, and Computing, and also Director of Graduate Programs at Bellini College from Tampa, Florida, University of South Florida. And it's an honor to be with you. We're going to start our first panel today, which is on formal methods for cybersecurity. We have 3 panelists and myself as part of panel 1. So we do have Dr. Julian Sinoz, Louis Gobin, both from CS Saclay, and also Dr. Rancor Molly from Bellini College of AI, Cybersecurity, and Computing at USF as panelists. Now, we're going to talk about different talking points, and we're going to hear from the experts in the field. We're going to talk about like implications on cryptography, cryptographic engineering, AI, and side channel attacks or implementation attacks, which are not merely algebraic and mathematical, but attacks that could be mounted because of the issues with implementations on hardware software platforms like ASIC FPGA in hardware and the other software platforms like, for example, RISC-V and ARM processors. So we're going to talk about these. We're going to limit our talk to 45 minutes. I do have 6 talking points, so I hope that we can get to all of these. Depends on the length of discussions in each topic, but we're going to make sure that we hopefully we can cover all these topics. That being said, we can start the panel with our panelists. Greeting everyone. Hi, Louis, Julian, and Anchor. And let you introduce yourselves first, and then we're going to start. So I go with Louis first.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, depending on your continent. So I am Louis Goubin. I am a professor at Versailles Saint-Quentin University, which is part of the Paris-Saclay merging of universities, and I am in charge of a research team about cryptography and information security.
Thank you very much, Louis. Julian.
Hello, everyone. I'm a fellow researcher at CEA-LIST. So the CEA is a French agency for atomic and alternative energies in France, and which is part of University Paris-Saclay as well. And I'm the new deputy director in charge of research at the Graduate School of Computer Science as well. And my research area is about formal methods applied to code safety and security.
Thank you very much, Julian and Ankur.
Hi everyone, nice to be here. I am assistant professor in Bellini College of AI, Cybersecurity and Computing in Tampa, Florida. So my research revolves around formal language theory, formal methods from a theoretical computer science perspective, and then we design architectures which can provide safety and safety and verification guarantee when used with AI-based approaches. So nice to be here.
All right, thank you very much again, everyone. So I'm going to start with our first talking point. So we want to talk about security proofs for cryptographic algorithms and protocols. So this would be the mathematical backbone that helps us move from trust to certainty for security algorithms and architectures. And such proofs not only validate our assumptions, but also guide the secure development and deployment of cryptographic systems in real-world applications. Now, I'm sure that you're familiar with post-quantum cryptography, for example. This is cryptography after we have quantum computers in future, which would be resistant against quantum attacks. So basically, quantum computers would enable attacks on public key cryptography, like elliptic curve cryptography, for example, where these would be attacking polynomial time, whereas when we have post-quantum cryptography, this would be resistant against such attacks. So that's the probably hottest topic in cryptography right now. People have been working on post-quantum cryptography for 10, 15 years. NIST has standardized some algorithms for both signatures and key encapsulation mechanisms. And it's continuing. Other than that, classical cryptography is still very important. If you go to any website right now, you see that ECC, elliptic curve cryptography, is being used. So with that, so the first talking point is security proofs for cryptographic algorithms. Feel free to start presenting your ideas and opinions, and I don't go by order, so feel free to add whatever you want, and then we go to the next topic.
Yeah, maybe I can explain what kind of problems are related with proofs and cryptographic algorithms. So basically, in cryptography, we never have an absolute proof of security, and what we call proofs in cryptography is something that relates some computational hypothesis. I mean, some mathematical problem that is assumed to be difficult to solve, and some cryptographic functionality, for instance, a sign algorithm or an encryption algorithm. And so there is a whole story of this concept of proofs in cryptography. For instance, for the RSA algorithm, which is, of course, not post-quantum, but it is still a lot used in many applications. There was, for instance, encryption version of RSA, which was called OAEP, and which had a proof. I mean, there was something had written a proof that proved that breaking the encryption system was implies breaking some mathematical problems, and the proof later appeared to be flawed. So it illustrates two parts of the problem. The first thing is to write a proof, because without a proof we cannot be really convinced about the security of the encryption algorithm. And the second part is to be sure that the proofs are correct. So it's a good illustration, I think, of the importance of doing proofs and also the importance of checking the proofs. And now for post-quantum algorithm, we have the same kind of problems. And for instance, with some colleagues, we are currently working on proofs about some new post-quantum proposals based on multivariate cryptography. So it's exactly the same problem, how to write such proofs, which become more and more complicated. We have proofs that are 20 pages long, and we have to be sure that there is no flaw in the proof. So yeah, just to illustrate one point of view about that.
Thank you very much. It's really good that you are working on post-quantum cryptography as well. Multivariate algorithms are very important, a subset of PQC algorithms, and that's really good that we can scale and extend what we've been doing for classical cryptography to PQC. All right, Julian and Kerr, if you have things to add.
So I can point out about one of the work which we are doing in this space. Cryptography or the quantum cryptography can be studied from the lens of many-body physics, like the tensor network. And few architectures which we have developed takes inspiration from the tensor network. So what the overall hypothesis is, you can show the formal verification or the association between post-quantum circuits and cryptography by transferring all the sequential compute to many-body tensor networks. And this gives you a formal guarantee that how the network convergence will be there, what is the polynomial time complexity of different automatas, such as hybrid automata or Bookie automata, which sometimes are towards NP complete, the solution. But you can show using these approaches, like with few of my colleagues in physics department, we are working on these constructions where you transfer sequential compute to quantum, and you can provide formal guarantee of convergence. You can provide formal guarantee of verification. You can also show that which problems are solvable in with finite time and finite resources. So this is something which has been there, and my colleagues are extending this into cryptography and proving the verifiability of those approaches. So physics is also coming into this picture, where we are combining these tensor networks to build a system which is verifiable, not just with the 2D structures, but also with the 4D structures. You can show this can exactly be calculated in the quantum qubits, and how cryptography would correlate with these findings.
Yeah, in addition to what was already said, and particularly regarding the difficulty and the length of security proof, it can be quite interesting to rely on tools to check the security proof themselves and to gain confidence in the fact that they are correct. Indeed. And so one possibility, for instance, is to use interactive provers such as EasyCrypt in the ROC proof assistant to check your proof and to help you to trust your proof and that there is no mistakes in the 20-page length proof.
All right, thank you very much. So let's go to our next topic so that we can cover hopefully everything today. So the next topic is formal methods for analyzing side channel attacks or implementation attacks and countermeasures. So side channel attack exploit a physical leakage rather than mathematical flaws, and formal analysis could provide a systematic and rigorous framework to detect and mitigate such attacks in both hardware like FPGA, ASIC, and software platforms. This is one of my main research areas, actually, for both classical and post-quantum cryptography. So just consider advanced encryption standard, for instance. It has been safe for 25 years now, mathematically and algorithmically. But when you implement that on hardware software platforms, your implementation could leak some like traces, so that the potential attacker could eavesdrop on and eventually get hold of the secret key. For instance, power traces, correlating them, and doing signal processing in order to get hold of the secret key, or fault analysis attacks where you, like when the attacker would inject faults and get the difference between the faulty and correct output and get the secret key, or merely like injecting faults to have erroneous output. Cache timing attacks is another type of attacks, as a subset of side channel attacks, where the time access to cache memory would be monitored, and if it's related to the secret key being shared, then potentially there could be like vulnerabilities there. So with that, so again, the topic is formal methods for analyzing side channel attacks and countermeasures. So what's your opinion on this?
I think it's a very useful to have. It's very useful to have tools also for that. What happens, in fact, is when you want to implement some cryptographic algorithm, and in a context where there are side channel information available to an attacker, you have to implement the algorithm in a different way. And for instance, if you consider power measurements or electromagnetic field measurements, you have to transform your implementation such that everything is kind of randomized. I mean, every intermediate value that should appear during the computation should now be a random value instead of the real value. And so cryptographers and engineers are transforming the implementation so that everything becomes random. But this is not so easy to do properly, and we have to prove that indeed each intermediate value is really random, or more precisely is not correlated to the sensitive values such as the cryptographic keys. And this is usually not easy to do by hand, and so there are more and more techniques to prove in a formal way that everything has been correctly randomized in an implementation. So I think it's very important to continue research in that, and it's also the case for fault attacks. When you introduce errors during a computation, you have physical means that are able to introduce errors, and so usually modern implementations contain some countermeasures that whose goal is to maintain the correct result, even if some variables have been altered by such faults. So, and this also can be treated by automatic tools. Yeah, that's the way I see the link between automatic verification tools and implementation containing proper countermeasures.
Thank you very much, Louis. Indeed, attacks are getting much sophisticated, for which we have to provide countermeasures, and those countermeasures would add area, delay, power consumption to the implementations. So the actual usage models that are being protected need to actually operate their own normal things, but also have countermeasures for side channel attacks, which could be a burden in terms of battery usage and like higher area and power consumption. So this is the price that we have to pay in order to protect these implementations. Anchor, Julian?
Yeah, so yeah, go ahead, Julian, you're saying something.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just to say that also another recent attacks also sometimes combine now several different exploit several different vulnerabilities, at least 2 or sometimes 3 even. And so it's also important to have new methods that are able to not only detect one side channel attack, but are able to detect an attack that exploits several vulnerabilities. And of course, it's much harder, but because of these recent attacks, it's become necessary.
Yeah. So I've been thinking on this problem, and there are tools from formal languages, right? So which are like symbolic abstractions, like the timed automata or the hybrid automata, which has which is a function of discrete and continuous variable, right? So in side channel attack, what usually happens is you exploit the observation behavior, right, and which may differ across different secret keys, but the traces for 1 versus 2 should satisfy a certain bound. So one could actually, and this is remodifying certain Bayes theorem which are there with the timed automata from 90s, is you produce like a symbolic automata modeling based on the time fact, right? Instruction domains you have, instruction branches taken, the traces you have, right? So if 2 secret key input would produce a non-equivalent automata, then the probability of leakage would be much higher. So automata checking, biosimulation verification, and tracing back the state machine pathway would be which are being used in literature and past, but the field is diverse. Grammatical inference, they'll show these properties across timed automata, and in cybersecurity we use this as a tools, but it can be enhanced. The way we interpret these results is how we defined the observation table, how we define the timing traces. So based on this, we can design different framework based on time automata to show that, okay, this is where the leakage is happening, and the comparison would lead to I'd say comparison would lead to these artifacts. There are different methods of compressing any observation table into automata, such as L star are there. There are different versions of L star. And then you can, using any Hopcroft's algorithm, we can reduce that into minimalistic or minimal automata. And the showing equivalence between that, if they learn the same structure, can be solved in polynomial time.
All right, great. Thank you very much, everyone. Let me quickly go to the next topic. So our next topic is bridging symbolic verification and AI in CPS, which is cyber physical systems. As you know, as AI is increasingly controls like critical infrastructures, then combining formal symbolic reasoning with data-driven methods could offer a promising path to ensure safety, correctness, and resilience in these complex real-world environments, cyber physical systems. Now, CPS is very important and it's very widespread. It has its own constraints in terms of power consumption, energy consumption, and also because it's a combination of a number of words. Protection for CPS in terms of security is also very important. But let's go back to this topic. So bridging symbolic verification and AI in cyber physical systems. What are your opinions?
So I can start on this topic, as this is the central part of my research. So majority of the deep learning systems which are out there, right, I term them as stochastic black box. We don't know what's happening. You just have input and there's output which these models generate. But they have been started showing some promising results, and it is being used in several security domain. So what we are trying to do is, can we guarantee the security and correctness? So we have to take one step back and understand what it means to learn any symbolic structure for any neural network. Can it learn a DFA? Can it learn a WFA? What is the expressive power of neural networks? And it is surprising to know that modern LLMs, which are based on transformer-based architectures, they are even least powerful than a finite automata, right? So one way to deal with this is you show the expressive power of any neural network or the AI architectures which are out there, what language it can learn. And then you go one step above and show, using fixed point theory and dynamical Lyapunov stability, that the functions which are out there to train these networks, such as for instance TANH, which is used for RNNs, we have shown that it has like 3 fixed point. Out of that, 2 fixed points are stable, one is unstable. So if network converges to that unstable point, it would have more stochastic behavior. So it's not going to benefit the end user if these systems are getting deployed. So you have to show the formal guarantees that it reaches the fixed point attractor. It doesn't have like a chaotic behavior. Second, you can verify the learning of these networks because you can embed the transition table into the weights of a neural network. So there are tensor recurrent neural networks from 90s, and then we have shown the extension where you can embed the transition table or even the partial transition table into the weights of a network and let network learn the underlying representation, how it reaches the end state. So this way your network becomes interpretable. And when you try to extract some behavior out of this as a state machine or like an automata, you can verify the working of that system, where it gives you the bound that if the traces are being done efficiently. If it is not done, it will say that, okay, it is going out of the state machine, so it is an incorrect or suspicious input. So this is where symbolic verification and AI comes into picture. You can verify the working of an AI from post-processing, where you transfer the entire system into a symbolic machine and then verify using model checking if it is satisfying the constraint. Other is you can design neural networks which obey these constraints. And third is you extract symbolic machines from these systems and then show that, okay, symbolic machine is similar to the domain knowledge machine, and you can verify the working of these systems based on that. So it gives you provable safety, it gives you robustness, and then it also makes your system more explainable, that it meets the learning, meets the logic framework.
Thank you very much, Anchor. Louis, Julian, do you want to add?
Yeah, actually, I fully agree with Ankur that you combining symbolic and verification with AI, with standard AI techniques and neural network or LLM or so on, could, in the general case, enhance the robustness and the safety guarantee that we could gain on the answer provided by the neural network, for instance. And so that is what we could gain by combining such symbolic techniques with other AI-based techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree, but I have no precise comment to to bring since it's not my my specialty in research. But yeah, I think it's interesting to introduce in the neural networks at the level of the weights some new ingredients. I like this idea.
Sure. Thank you very much, Louis. So let me go to the next topic, which is kind of related to this, so we can be quick on these 4 topics. Formal rule extraction from neural networks for security assurance. Now, as neural networks become integral to security sensitive systems, and it could be any usage domain, it could be any usage model. Extracting human understandable, verifiable rules is key to ensuring that their behavior aligns with safety and policy constraints. So again, formal rule extraction from neural networks for security assurance. It is related to the previous topic, so please comment if you have, otherwise we can go to the next one.
So I'll add a few things to these topics, right? So neural networks mainly networks which have temporal or the recurrent structure are actively being used in intruder detection and malware classification or protocol modeling. So because they have access to states, even in malware and Trojan, you need access to some temporal abstract. Now the architectures which are there, and since we need these methods to be more computationally, I'll say least expensive compared to what is out there, we need to have a system which shows equivalence with a minimal state machine. So if a state machine, let's say, takes 8 state to recognize input of 1 million tokens, you should have a neural network which satisfies these constraints. And we can go back and take some inspiration from physics. So in physics, like if you look into Einstein's and Maxwell's proof, they use tensor equations a lot, which is like higher dimensional weights. But if we look into the higher dimensional weights, you can actually encode the state transition of any automata or any state machine. So it will show you what is the input, what is the current state, and what is the next state. So a transition table, which we usually use to do model checking, can be embedded into these high order weights. And if you go into more complex grammar, so in some cases, some malwares go beyond regular languages. They are more context free. You have to design even higher order tensors where you embed memory states as well, or memory traces as well. So once you do that, you can quantize. So quantization, since these activation functions will either converge between 0 to 1, you can quantize these values to extract like a discrete states from these systems. And it has verifiable guarantee from theoretical perspective, but we have also shown across like 40K different models, even if you train the systems, let's say for 70% efficiency, it can still extract a faithful representation from these systems. Once you extract the state representation, you go back to regular expression mapping and then convert that into human readable language. So this is the entire framework which it follows. But this is what it has been going in recent times, where we go back and see what is the more important artifacts and malware classification, and then design these structures not to obey their principles, but to verify if these information can be extracted faithfully, not just randomly and one or two iterations, but faithfully across different scenarios. So it can also help in seeing if the TCP or TLS specification is violated, under what conditions these are violated. So it goes back to cryptography if we extend these framework more broadly.
Thank you very much, Anchor. Louis, Julian, if you have some quick notes, otherwise we can go to the next topic.
That's okay for me.
Okay, all right, sure. So let's go to our fifth topic. So the topic is using formal methods for code security, particularly at source code level. So this is important by applying rigorous verification techniques directly to source code. We can catch vulnerabilities early on. So this is very, very important to enforce security policies systematically, and to build software with provable guarantees of correctness and safety. So source code, using formal methods for source code security. What's your opinion?
Yes, indeed, it's quite important, particularly for critical systems for which one cannot afford to have any major security issue, typically in the defense industry or in the nuclear industry. That's not possible. So in such domains, it's not enough to just test the system to check for some vulnerabilities. So you need to have stronger guarantees, and so mathematical guarantees. So that's why it is important to apply formal methods at code level in that particular context. And a line of research consists in adapting tools that already exist to verify safety properties to that particular security properties, because indeed there already exists quite mature tool for safety properties that are used in industrial domains, such as avionics, for instance. And so it could be nice to adapt them to interesting security properties. And there are plenty, maybe not plenty, but several techniques that do already exist and are used, which includes runtime verification, model checking, symbolic execution, abstract interpretation, deductive verification. So all of them were their own strengths and limitations. But still are fully usable and adaptable to security properties. Another advantage to use existing tools from safety to security is that actually safety is a necessary condition to have security. If you have one bug in your code, it may potentially be exploitable by an attacker. So it's important to always first prove that you have no undefined behaviors, typically for C code, so to prevent a large class of exploitation, and then to focus on other security properties such as confidentiality or integrity, for instance. That is what is often done when checking that. For instance, just to mention one example, at Thales in France, which is one of the leading European company in defense, aerospace, cyber, and digital sectors, they use a formal tool to, namely Pharmacy, to verify 500 integrity and confidentiality properties of a smart card virtual machine that is used in password and IDs, so that the virtual machine has been certified by a certification body to the highest security standard. so-called EAL7 common criteria in France. So that is one of the examples that we can do by reusing safety tools to security. Yeah.
One thing I can add is that in some situations, even if the things have been checked at the source level code, there can be problems at the lower level once the code has been compiled. And so, especially for side channel attacks, just one example, for instance, what is important in many cryptographic algorithms is that it is a constant time. The time it takes to compute does not depend on the values. And it can be okay at the source level, but the compiler, for some reason, can simplify some branches, and it is not anymore true at the lower level. So I think it's also important to have maybe to have tools inside the compilation process or at the lower level. But it's
indeed, Louis is perfectly right. Typically, you can prove things at the model level. Typically, you can prove your security protocol, and then you need to prove to have also proof at your implementation level at the source code level, and then either in the compilation toolchain or directly to verify additional security properties at the binary code level at the end of the toolchain. So on all together, when verifying the model, verifying the code, the source code on the binary code or on the compilation, then you get very, very strong security guarantees, and you need to combine all of them.
Yeah, great.
Great points. Yeah, you talked about constant time implementation. It's also very, very important in post-quantum cryptography. Like take signatures, for example. Key generation is kind of fine, but signature generation verification could be very vulnerable to such attacks if constant time implementation is not there. So again, side channel intersection with side channel attacks is also important. Okay, so let's move on to our last topic, and then we're gonna wrap up. So our last topic is formal specification languages for expressing security properties and policies that aim to be verified. Now, these languages provide the precision needed to define what secure really means, serving as a foundation for automated verification and enforcement across software, hardware systems. So again, the topic is formal specification languages for expressing security properties and policies that aim to be verified. Your opinions?
Yes, actually, the introduction was very good. When you want to prove security properties, you need a mathematical language to express those properties, and it's not enough to specify them in a natural language such as English. So the question is how you provide such specification language to express the properties of interest, and particularly for proving confidentiality or integrity properties. There exist already many languages that could be used to encode properties, such as temporal language, for instance, LTL or LTL variants for temporal logics. You have also specification language that you can use to specify source code properties such as GML for Java code or ACSL for C code, but still they are hardly usable to easily express integrity or confidentiality properties, for instance. So what is good to provide is to provide some higher level, at system level, specification language to easily write these properties, and also easily proofread them, and to have confidence that they really express that you have in mind, and then to possibly to use some tools to convert them to some other formalism, already existing formalism, that could be used for automatic or interactive verification. Typically, I talked about the Thales example of the Java card virtual machine, and actually, in order to do the integrity and confidentiality proof, they first use a formal specification language that is able to express the 500 specification and properties, and then use a tool to convert them at source code level and spare the necessary annotation into the source code in a way that you can prove that the code complies with that all these properties. And it is done in an automatic setting, so it is very good. And it would have not been possible to do so without such a formal specification language, just to take an example. And you can also design, there is no generic, at the moment, generic language that is able to express any kind of properties. So a line of research is about designing domain-specific specification language that could target, for instance, access control properties for operating systems, or non-interference properties, or other kind of properties, and so to provide settings to express easily that properties and convert them to, for instance, other existing setting in a way that can be automatically handled.
I can add on top of it, right? Means I agree with Julian that there is no fixed formulation yet, and that there's still an ongoing research, right? Usually, what we do in mathematically proving is we go with using some mathematical property to show that okay, mathematical modeling can be done on the program and traces, and then we convert that into security policies based on the formalogic formulas, and then we use first order logic, temporal logic, or automata theoretic terms to show that these specific security policies are satisfied. But what is this is done at different level of abstraction. It has also been done at the binary level, where we see more faithful results being generated. But what is lagging is if certain programs are just beyond certain epsilon, we treat them as unsafe. But it's just that the signature is safe. It has just changed the behavior by some margin. So the ongoing research, which a couple of my colleagues are trying to do, is yeah, as Julian pointed out, have a domain specific I'll say security policies based on some mathematical formulation, but at the same time, it also provides a formal guarantee that okay, if it goes beyond certain epsilon, what satisfies as attack versus what satisfies as a change in instruction set, right? So they have been trying to integrate these multiple components into a single framework.
Yeah, and it's true that measuring the security qualitatively is not enough, and you need quantitative measure about that particular epsilon that you mentioned is not important enough to be classified as a security issue typically. Yeah.
All right, great. I think we have only 5 minutes left, 5 minutes or so left. So I want to wrap up, and I want to add a question. Please feel free to add to that. So for a young investigator who wants to do research in like formal security mechanisms in cybersecurity, or security proofs, what would be the hottest topic, or the like important topics of this date that they can start working on, and what would be the most important venue to start working on and fill the gap? So please just wrap up and answer this question like in probably 1 minute each.
So maybe I can start, and I'll be brief. Maybe I'm biased towards AI, but as since these tools are being shown, like it is being used across different domains now, not just security. But there's a big gap in AI, which is like the learnability and formal verification of these technologies. We know they work. We don't know why they're working, and what they learn. We know they can express some function, but learnability is, can they learn that function faithfully? And if they learn that function faithfully, is it verifiable in that sense? So if anyone is entering into this field, I would say formal verification of AI and the learnability bound for any AI based approaches is a big thing, which can be connected with high risk settings. And to start in this domain, I'll say first learn all about the expressivity bound of all the neural architectures which are out there, and then see under stochastic property what functions they can learn and what are the limitations on this. And then the next hurdle would be showing the verification is also true beyond learnability.
Yes, on my side, I agree that yes, with what you said. Another important point is that with research area, I would say, is how to lower the level of expertise that is required to use the tool to provide such formal guarantees. And typically, for instance, a current line of research is how to use LLM to help engineer to design their formal properties from natural languages. Of course, it would just be an help to avoid the properties. You have no guarantee that what would be generated is correct, but still it can help, and there are many work worldwide about that particular question.
As concerns cryptography, one line of research which seems to be very interesting is also to have automatic tools, not to analyze already existing protection, but also to try to find new attacks. So there are currently many tries to, for instance, to find a new kind of attacks on a symmetric cryptographic algorithm, or to find new attacks on signature schemes, but with trying many possibilities in an automatic way. So I think this can be also a very interesting line to explore these attacks, and it already has some results to find better, to improve some existing attacks on, for instance, AES algorithm with automatic tools. So I think attacks also can be improved by automatic tools. So yeah.
All right, thank you very much to our panelists, Louis, Julian, and Ankur. I hope that this panel has been like fruitful for both young investigators and more mature investigators and the students. So we went over 6 talking points and talked about like the details of formal methods in cybersecurity. Again, thanks a lot to the audience as well. The next panel on network security for a modern era will begin in just a few minutes. Thank you very much, everyone.
And I was muted, so again, sorry. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel, Network Security for a Modern Era. My name is Alexis Olivero. I'm the lab manager of French Communicating Systems Lab, part of French Atomic Energy Commission. And I have the great pleasure of moderating this discussion today. So, well, we live in a world where our digital and physical lives are increasingly intertwined, and thus the mere fact that we need to securing the network is more and more critical and relevant to us. So let's discuss this. Let's discuss network security. And for that, we are fortunate to be joined by three distinguished experts who will help us to navigate this complex landscape from three unique perspectives. So first, I am glad to welcome Professor Najib Aritsardi.
Hello.
Professor Aritsardi is professor at University of Paris-Saclay and head of the Next Generation Networks Engine team at the David Laboratory. And his research focuses on the architecture and security of 5G and 6G networks, the Internet of Things, and virtualized infrastructures. Next, we have Professor Ning Wang, an assistant professor at the Bellini College of Artificial Intelligence, Cybersecurity and Computing at the University of South Florida. Her work is at the cutting edge of AI security. She explores how to defend AI itself from sophisticated attacks like model poisoning and various attacks against data privacy.
Thank you.
And finally, I have, hopefully, is Professor Pazos Rivera here? I don't think so.
I think he may lost his connection.
Okay, well, let's hope that he will be again to rejoin very soon in the very next future. But in a nutshell, he's also an assistant professor at the Bellini College at the University of South Florida. And his research focuses at the intersection between cyber attack and real world. So that's very interesting in order to address the consequences of attacks on our topics. So yeah, again, welcome to all of you and welcome to Professor Pazos Rivera whenever he can join. And let's start maybe with the foundation. And for that, I would like to ask a question to Professor Aritsardi. So let's try to give an overview. Today, we have already started with the previous session, and I assume that we are continuing in the current one. We are going to speak quite a lot about artificial intelligence. So can you help us, Professor, understand how is artificial intelligence being used today to build a new generation of defense systems in network infrastructures?
Great. Thanks, Alexis, for the introduction. In fact, AI is a big threat now in the network. It can be used even within the protocol stack. That means at the resource allocation level. and also as an overlay, if you want, here at least in 5G for detecting attacks or analyzing in the SIAM, even for the security part. So we have this AI in the network as quality of service in the control plane, but even here we can use it for the security. So in 5G, the AI is an overlay. So we try, and here the main challenge, it should be compliant with the different standards as 3GPP, IEEE, or whatever. Here it's more in cellular if it's in 5G. So the idea is how to integrate this AI modules or boxes to be compliant with the current architecture of a telco, like Orange here in France, or AT&T, or British Telecom, or whatever. But to do that, for the AI, we need the data. So there is a big challenge how we collect the data, and the overhead of this, it must be, we try to minimize this. And we try also to push all the non-intrusive methods. The second, and how to run this AI algorithm, there is training and inference. So what is the cost for a network, even in terms of energy, or in terms of hardware, in terms of CapEx? And third, when we detect if it's anomaly, if it's attacks, what should be the automated mitigation to do that? Here is the main challenges now in 5G. And in 6G, here it's in release 18 or 19. It's what we call now, it's AI native. That means it's in the network. And in doing so, it's even the design 6G is under progress. The AI is not an overlay, but it's within the current architecture. So here is the main link of AI at the security level, or even at the network, and all these challenges of detection, and how would we integrate this to be compliant with the standard.
Thank you, Professor. So many questions to consider afterwards. Thanks a lot for this answer. Professor Wang, would you like to complete or give your viewpoint on this very topic?
Yes. So, are you asking for the role of AI in cybersecurity?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the introduction before. And to answer this question, I want to discuss more about large language models, because we know large language models is emerging recently, and is changing everything. And I want to discuss about the role of large language model in cybersecurity. And one of the major use of large language model is synthetic data generation. For example, for malware detection, we need data for training a malware detection model. And usually for malware detection, the data is imbalanced. It means that the malicious data is much less than the benign data. So we have a scarce data for malicious samples. And the large language model, for example, GPT can generate programs that can supply training data for software security tools. And I have also worked on this area, and it has demonstrated that the GPT model can generate very relevant malicious code for improving training the training accuracy. And also, I want to discuss about large language model not only can enhance malware detection, it can also enhance the explainability of many security-related applications. For example, intrusion detection systems. This model, intrusion detection system, they traditionally relies on signatures or anomaly detection, but they cannot explain why this traffic is malicious or not. So large language model offers this new capability. They can understand the complex pattern and also explain why this traffic is is malicious, and the potential intent of the intruders, and even recommend some responses. So use these two examples. I think both the synthetic generation capability and the reasoning capability of large language model has changed the many cybersecurity applications. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Professor. That's extremely thrilling examples of how the landscape is about to change. And actually, I would like, so first of all, Professor Pazos Rivera, I'm very glad that you were able to join today.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome aboard. So I introduced your topics of interest. And so you are, as I said, at the border between the attacks and the consequences are very challenging and critical systems such as cyber physical systems. So Professor Wang gave a first viewpoint on how the threat landscape is about to change with LLMs that can be used for generating malware and malicious code. Maybe can you share with us your view on how today the threat landscape is changing because of AI, or in line with AI, or maybe other trends in the threat landscape?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for the privilege to join here. I hope that you can hear me well. To address your question, so typically when we have a ransomware attack, it has as an originating source the human factor, right? And we have seen the evolution of with LLMs, the deep fakes that make it hard for us to determine whether something is legitimate as far as the source goes, or the content even. So AI is playing on both sides. From the attacker's side, the deepfakes are generating content and potentially allowing employees within the organization to respond to fake or not legitimate emails or content, that perhaps voicemails, addresses from videos, or content that is generated from a malicious source, and prompting users to start clicking and allowing malware to get into the organization. And one of the first phases of an attack is to enumerate, find vulnerabilities within an organization, and once their attackers are within the organization, it makes it potentially more destructive and impactful for that attack to spread within the network. So AI is definitely playing a big role here with the deepfakes and the complexity of the phishing attacks that now we're starting to see, that prompts organization to elevate their security posture to limit the exposure that they have to this type of attacks. And humans have the tendency to be the weakest link in the security context, and we have to train our users in order to prevent these advances in AI to get the attackers an advantage when it comes to inserting themselves in the network. So and specifically when we're talking about cyber physical systems that have the connection with critical infrastructure, when we have to deal with energy sector, water treatment plants, transportation, communications infrastructure, it becomes even more.
I think Professor Pazos Rivera was about to say that it was becoming more and more critical and more relevant to be addressed. So let's hope we can.
Sorry,
hopefully
seems like something on the network went wrong, and I got back. Can you hear me now? Yes, so I was on the topic of the connection between.
Let's give him. Let's try to give him a few more seconds to join.
I think
you are back. That's perfect, Professor.
I'm in. I just made it. Sorry. So I was in the topic of the connection of cyber's physical system, critical infrastructure, and connecting with these AI advances, right? So when we talk about services that our communities depend on, water infrastructure, energy, communications, transportation, these issues become even more important because the human factor within these organizations play a major role. One phishing attack that succeeds could render an entire community without water, without energy, and that has a tremendous impact. Nowadays, the warfare is not just about missiles and rockets. It extends to the cybersecurity landscape, and we have seen with Ukraine and other countries where attacks have rendered communities without power, and with that, then we have a country that crumbles. So we have to secure those resources against those AI attacks that are now advancing.
Thank you very much, Professor. Maybe we could go back to the very foundations of the technical part of the AI use for detection. Professor Aitzardi, you mentioned that the data is the key. It's the initial key.
Yes.
How would you qualify the landscape of the data sets availability for training models that are related to network security?
I see. So for the network security, for the data, it depends on the type of the network. If we assume a cellular network, that means there is an operator, telco operator, like AT&T or Orange. So they have access to the data, they own the data of their customer. So here it's easier. So for this problematic, who owns the data, it's easier for them. But the problem, how would we collect this data? For example, if we have an attack, an IDS, which is integrated in the core network of 5G, or even in the RAN, if you want, it depends on the architecture where we want. So we know the protocol stack, and if we are at the core network, we need, to handle the packet, the IP at level 3. And here, to analyze this data, if there is some encrypted data, it will be difficult. Here really the challenge. Here is the first challenge. If there is encrypted or not data from the end user. The second challenge is how do we detect? Because if there is an attack, it's not necessarily at the path level. That means at the traffic level. It can be even at the infrastructure level. So if we have a telco like Orange or AT&T, there is a platform, there is a vendor like Nokia or Ericsson. So the problem, how do we push some technical tools to collect the data from this infrastructure without having this access to the code source of the vendor, or these non-intrusive approaches for the vendor? Here, it's really a challenge. Some vendors, it's in general, we don't have access. We have the telco has to pass. There is an SLA between the vendor and the telco. But now the idea of the telco, they want to manage their data, whatever the infrastructure, Nokia, Ericsson, or whatever. So all this challenging to collect the data with no intrusive. Here is the first. The second, if there is a data which are encrypted, here also it's problematic. Here is the main challenge for a telco. But if we have a local network, for example, in the airport, even wireless, wired, Wi-Fi or local, here also I think it's the same problematic, but it's less challenging than an infrastructure like an operator like AT&T or that means a cellular, that means 3GPP architecture. Whatever. Also, we can get also for this data here. If we do this within the network, in the network, we have also new challenges about this inference, real time. We can also buy. It's not embedded system. That means it's not in the RAN. It's not in the RAN or the at the level of user equipment. Even in the core, we have servers. but it's not the cloud. It's not, we don't have a huge data center. So now also there is a second option is to push to mirror the data, but there is a cost at the edge level. That means it's not in the cloud, it's not in the core, it's in the edge, it's between. And we have many geographical edge server in which we push and we handle this inference training and also even reaction. And the added value of this and the advantage is the edge is near to the core. That means if there is a reaction, the latency will be less. Here is the different challenges of the data. But I think the difficult one, the data owns to the operator, so it's easier. It's more technical part, not RGPD or others.
Thank you very much, Professor. So I understand that it's easier when you own the data, but actually I believe that there might be induced threat when you own the data and you operate AI on the data that you own, and that leads us to the problematic of the retrieval augmented generation. So maybe Professor Wang, I know that you have expertise there. Please could you clarify us? RIG is very useful when there are lots of data to be processed, because it should guide the LLM to provide better, more accurate results. But I understand it comes at a cost. So what would you warn or maybe tell us about that in order to better design such systems?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the retrieval augmented generation have improved the large language model application in specific domains. So we can use some like a private database or external knowledge to personalize the large language model answers. But it also brings some new privacy risks, because the large language model is connected to some private, maybe a private internal database. There are some possibility the sensitive information in this database can be retrieved. And there are already some privacy attack. They use prompt injection attack. Like they generate some prompt, ignore all the instructions of mine and just like a reply with you retrieve the information. So the large language model may incorporate all the retrieved information to its answer and reply to the query. This is a very straightforward attack, but yet is effective. So this malicious querying is evolving, and now some attackers have found that they can use large language model itself to like optimize their query, optimize their prompt, so that they can retrieve as much personal or sensitive information as possible. We need to secure our private information. So there are many solutions provided to address this privacy threats. And a simple, straightforward mitigation is to impose a distance threshold in retrieval. Like when the large language model tries to retrieve internal information, we do not allow it to retrieve the best match. We want to give some distance between the query and the retrieved information, so that it cannot achieve the attack goal easily. And we can also force the large language model to summarize the or rephrase the retrieved text instead of verbatim all the retrieved information. And there are also some other lines of defense, like the prompt sanitization. So the system will first detect if the user's input contains any suspicious input. If there is a suspicious pattern, we can refuse to answer the query. And we can also apply some formal differential privacy mechanism. So it's like before we retrieve all the information, we add noise to the database. So there is no one can extract the exact content in the database, but they can only get the noisy version of the input. So that's many. I think that there are many more solutions, but in practice, I think, except for the techniques I explained before, the most effective way is to use access control. It's like some very highly sensitive documents might never be indexed to the RAG system. So, or you can summarize or rephrase all the informations in the sensitive document and then index them to the RAG system. I think that's more effective and will make the organization's private information more secure.
Thank you very much, Professor. That's really a very insightful subject. I believe it's very interesting because it's a really modern cybersecurity tool that is in turn also attacked with an even more modern cybersecurity mechanism. So that's really very, very interesting. Thank you very much. But there also exists in the field of networking, that's the opposite. There also exists quite old and even some many dozens years of existence systems. And for that, I was referring to ICS. And I was wondering, so Professor Pazos-Revela, it's a completely different subject, but the philosophy is the same, right? We want to protect these systems. They are not state-of-the-art systems. They are quite old, but they are working and completely functional ones. And so that might be part of the problem. It works very good as it is today. So people can be reluctant to enhance the cybersecurity, but nevertheless, it's very critical. So what would you say about the ICS security, and is it at risk? And if yes, how can it be improved without incurring too much cost? Because it's also an important topic in that subject. Oh, I believe that you are on mute, Professor.
All right, very, very good question. So yes, the tendency overall for any organization is to improve processes to have a competitive advantage in the industry, and that applies to ICS processes within any industry, whether it's energy generation, distribution, water treatments. Overall, there's an advantage to incorporating advancements in technologies to have that competitive advantage, more efficiency, data exchange between supply chain parties, and safety too. I mean, obviously safety is of paramount important too. So all these technologies that advances would potentially be able to leap forward any organization with these elements that I just mentioned. So it's not about we're going to stay the way we are because we're fine. We have to always continue to improve our processes and advance our goals to be more competitive and provide services in a more efficient way to the community. So how do we incorporate security overall? Obviously, security is impacting everything nowadays. So it touches in ICS industries as well. We have to incorporate governance structures, repetitive processes that allows us to study impact and risks of incorporating security elements within the services that we provide as an industry. We have to be able to, okay, so let's say, for example, if we are considering SIEMs or a firewall within the security posture that we're going to implement, well, how that firewall would impact the processes that we currently have, how we tested a firewall in a POC or a test environment to see the impact that the rules that we're eventually going to implement will impact processes. and services that we provide. So we have to have a repetitive process, a testing phase of all those security measures that we adopt before we bring them into a production environment. And in the industry, we have several basic layers, right? Basing it on the Purdue model or a IEC 62443. There are different layers: the enterprise layer, the controls layer, the sensors layer. So depending on where we're planning to incorporate the security controls, we have to study again the impact that that control is going to have on communications, on the services that the processes provide, and we have to always study in a setting that is resembling as close as possible the production environment, how that impact is going to be, so that we minimize the cost. Obviously, if we have to consider cost, the impact of those implementation security controls are going to incur cost. So it's not just the purchase of the firewall or the SIEMs product, is the impact on the production that the organization, the industry has, and the services that it provides. So I think that kind of gives an overall idea of how to proceed. There's several guidelines. ENISA in Europe has provided several guidelines for IT, OT implementations of security standards. On our side, we have NIST. So there are organizations providing documents, guidelines on how to implement security controls and lowering costs of those of the implementations of those security costs. So we have to always refer to governance, those guidelines that provides us with the standards on how to proceed and incorporate controls without having to incur in high costs.
Thank you very much. Actually, this leads me to maybe another question, which would be the role and the relevance of the AI at the edge of the network, because here you mentioned the need to have impact evaluation and testing, and that's obviously very important, because ICS criticals are very sensitive. There could be safety implications, so it's necessary to know in advance how the system would react. But the fact is that AI is by essence impredictive. It might give one result in a specific condition, and if the neural network weights are initialized otherwise, the result will be different in a second iteration. So there could be a problem of determinism, and this is the first part of my question. Do you think it could affect the relevance of putting AI systems to secure safety critical infrastructures? So that would be the first part of my question. And if you believe there is a role for AI for security at the edge, then there will be another problem, which is that of the limited amount of resources at the edge of the network. So that would be another question. So I would be very interested in hearing your answer, and maybe afterwards the answer of Professor Aitzardi, who is more or less dealing with the same questions, but at the IoT level. So Professor Pazos-Rivera, please.
So yes, I think the answer to the first question of adopting AI at the edge and providing security context in an ICS environment, I think we're in the early stages of AI. AI has a ways to go to maturity. And I think Dr. Wang was mentioning guardrails and controls to prevent AI to hallucinate or perhaps leak data that shouldn't be leaked, or attackers to inject with malicious prompts, or even attack the data itself of the models. So there's several guardrails that have to be guaranteed in order for us to adopt AI in an ICS setting. I think gradually that would happen, but with the maturity and the evolution that AI and the security part that the implementation would eventually evolve towards. Now, I think there's still open questions, and the evolution and maturity of AI will eventually lead there. But at least for the moment, I think if an organization is considering the adoption of AI within the ICS context, as it's probably already happening, we have to guarantee that there are guardrails to prevent attackers to inject malicious prompts or affect the data, or have an unpredictable behavior within that AI solution. I think that's kind of addressing the first question. What was? Could you repeat the second one, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, the second one is more related to computing power. Would it just work to put AI at the edge, where some place where you don't have GPUs or stuff like that? I'm really caricatural. I know it's not as easy as that, but that would be more or less a question. Would it work at the edge?
I think it will work. Yeah, as long as there's the computing resources and the data that the AI agent would need to provide, I guess, the interaction with the agents, whatever those agents are, happen to be human or software based. It could be feasible, yes, and implementable in the edge.
Yeah, I can add to this question. I agree with Marvin, it is feasible. But about the large language model like GPT, it requires a lot of compute and memory resources. For example, GPT-4 has more than 1 trillion parameters. So I think it still raises some challenges. And if we use security, I think that the security require like a real-time decision. So if we rely on cloud-based large language model, it will introduce unacceptable latency. So I think there is still a challenge for pushing large language model into edge. So we can use some technologies like to pruning the large language model or distillation the large language model or quantizations to make the large language model smaller so that we can push it to the edge device. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I would like to add too. So the concept of AI could have different tiers, right? So we will have the full model in a cloud, in a data center with hundreds of GPUs, but we could have an agent just making API calls to that model. So the agent could be on the edge without the amount of resources that a full data center will bring, but still make calls to that AI LLM and get back and interact with an ICS industrial environment below. So there are different tiers that we could talk about AI and where those different tiers could be placed.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Aitzardi, would you like to say a few more words about how you secure billions of IoT devices at the edge?
Yes, at the edge, it depends on the criticality and what is the reactivity that you want. For example, if it's SIEM, here we need to analyze the logs, not only the packets, that means we are outside and even at the application level, logs and traces, and here we don't have a choice. Do this in the network, it's not doable. We need to push at the edge, maybe in the cloud, but cloud it will be offline. There is no reactivity. But there is some like IDS, it's at the packet level. We don't have the idea is to do it not in the edge, even in the core or even in the RAN if we can do it. In doing so, the reactivity will be better, and that means the security will be improved. But for this security, for example, one of the keyword here in the network, it will depend on the flows and the architecture. You see the IoT. For example, if we have IoT flows based on 3GPP, it will depend. We have two flows, two paths. Over the data plane, that means the G node B, UPF, and then N6 are in the edge. And we have also another path over the control plane. That means IMF, SMF. And we have two paths. And then sure, behind UPF, it's the edge and then cloud. It means internet. If we assume some supervised, it's not LLM, just supervised and time series. If we do it in the edge for these IoT flows at the packet level, and the volume of traffic of one device of IoT, it's not huge. It's not so easy. Maybe do it at the edge level. It's better. We have more data, and the risk is less. But if we assume another type of flows, for example, autonomous vehicle, if there is an attack, there is an incident, and it's not so easy to get a latency of 1 second. It should be even less. And here we don't have a choice, is to do it in the core. So my answer, do AI, it will depend on the traffic, and that means on the application. If it's critical, the idea is to do it in the embedded part, even the core, it's not embedded. There is some resources, but it's different is more than user equipment. If there is, if it's not critical, the idea is to push it behind N6 interface of 3GPP. And in doing so, even the telco, they can trust us, because in general, the telco operator, they don't want to integrate our solutions or security solutions in the core for the stability and to improve the quality of service. So here my answer, it will depend on the application.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. So we have, I think I could win a few more minutes because there is a last topic that I would like to address before the end words, and that is the topic of reaction. In your very first talk, Professor Aitadi, you mentioned the fact that we could react. We could not only detect but also react, and yes. It's something that Professor Wang definitely mentioned with her RAG protection scheme. It's a kind of proactive reaction, but the fact is that with AI, it not only detects, it also takes actions, and that can be also something dangerous, something damaging. So how can we protect against that? How can we keep AI a very efficient tool and not something that will ruin our network because it has been manipulated by an attacker, a clever attacker?
Yes.
Maybe Professor Wang, if you want to start on that topic.
Yeah, I think how to protect the integrity of the model is very challenging, but very important. And how to mitigate this attack, the manipulation, I think is still ongoing, a very hot topic. And I think if an organization is looking for to verify the model is not like modified by some attackers, there are multiple layers solutions. For example, I think the first solution is to verify the source of the model. So sometimes the model will pretend to be from a verified like a company, but maybe it has modified by some attacker by like fine-tuning the model and then publishes the model for usage. So the first thing I think we can do is to verify the source, where the model is from. We can use like a digital signature or checksums to do that. And secondly, I think we can use some formal method or like reverse engineer to verify if there is any trigger or backdoor is injected in the model. And also, I think we can have some ensemble cross-checking. We do not rely on a single model. We have multiple models, and we give the same query or same instruction for these models, and we just watch the response of the models. If they have consistent behavior, that's good. But if there is one model, his behavior is different from others, that may be a flag for like the model is modified by some attackers. So yeah, that's my that's my thought for this.
Thanks a lot. Professor Pazos-Rivera, how can we make sure that the factory will not get completely trashed by AI?
Yes, that's very important. So let me mention first that I think back to what I mentioned earlier, AI is evolving, and AI is a tool. It's not replacing the human in many aspects. So if the action, the controlling action on a certain process is critical, perhaps AI is not the best to be placed in that situation. If an organization is considering in placing AI in a decision making or final actional element, then I think it's important for us to thoroughly test that solution. Perhaps we had red teamers, and red teamers could be a solution that heavily tries to attack that agent with malicious prompts, data exfiltration attacks, and find out vulnerabilities within that model that perhaps before we bring it into production and make a final decision in an actual environment, then we could eliminate those vulnerabilities, correct the model before we bring it into production. So I think those two elements, I think, are the most critical. The human factor is still very critical in the ICS environment. So perhaps if the final decision, whether it's an agent or a process or a human, impacts heavily, and the risk of that solution or of that final decision is very impactful, then perhaps that's not necessarily the place to place AI. If we're still considering a placement of AI within an ICS environment where the risks are not so high, then I think that the model has to be thoroughly tested, and perhaps even red team could be involved in assessing the vulnerabilities of that model before it becomes adopted in the environment, so that we could expose vulnerabilities before it's actually part of the system.
Thank you, Professor. And very quickly, please, Professor Saidi, your point on anti-manipulated reaction before we go to closing remarks already.
So it's for the reaction and interesting on the data sets. Sure, it can be an attacker not at the infrastructure level, as you can see. Even all my answers are at the infrastructure, and then there is a data. The attacker can be also at the inference level. That means the AI algorithm can be attacked. And here there is a new tools even at the AI level, or this explainability. How do we manage if there is a literature? I don't know if it's so rich, because I've just started in my team to work on that. So how do we secure all this AI model, and the attack is focused on the AI model or the data set? Here it's a new challenge, to be transparent with you. I think the literature, not in the network level or the telecom level, is rich on that, but which I think we can try to make use the literature rich. The rich literature used in other subjects, for example, I don't know, maybe in data scientists, the classical one, and to see if these methods can be applied or not. So with this topic, it's new in my side. So here it's my point.
Okay, so thank you very much. I believe we won't have much more time for our actually detailed concluding remarks. So I will try to summarize your points. Professor Wang, it's about consistency. Professor Pazos-Rivera, it's about keeping human in the DevSecOps, and clearly AI will not completely replace the human actor in the DevSecOps. And Professor Saidi, it's very relevant to point out that the relevance of AI intoxication in the network environment is a complex problem that has to be elaborated more upon. It's not just like image recognition and having a model making intoxicated into believing that a dog is a cat. It's more complex than that, and it has to be addressed from the network viewpoint. And actually, it's a very good concluding remark. We consider AI and we have to adapt it to the use of network and to the specific requirements of network. And that's a tough problem, I believe. So thank you all of you. I believe that we have really thought-provoking session, really very, very insightful. So thanks again. And now I think that we can jump to our next panel. The next panel is implication and policies, and it will begin shortly.
Hey, good afternoon to everyone over in Europe, and good morning to all of our folks here in the States. A quick introduction of myself. I'm James Jacobs. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Policy at the Florida Center for Cybersecurity. We appreciate our sister institute, GNSI, for allowing us to join you all today and host this panel discussion. The discussion this morning is going to center around an overview of policy implications of some of the emerging technologies that we've discussed today. Glenn, can you guys hear me? I believe we're ready for our panelists. Thank you. We're joined today by several distinguished panelists. I am going to go around the horn and give you each an opportunity to introduce yourselves very briefly, if we could, for about 30 seconds. If we could, Dr. Liccato, could we start with you?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm John Liccato. I'm an associate professor of computer science and engineering at the USF Bellini College of AI, Cybersecurity, and Computing. Also director of the Advancing Machine and Human Reasoning Lab, and I have a startup company called Actualization AI.
Thank you, Dr. Liccato. Dr. Conscian, maybe we could have you next.
Hello. So I'm full professor of computer science at Paris-Saclay University, and my research focuses on formal methods. For several years, I've been designing and developing automated time provers. And recently, I've been interested in the blockchain technology. So more specifically in the design and verification of consensus algorithm, as well in how formal techniques can be applied to verify smart contracts.
Thank you, Doctor. And last but not least, Mr. Rodi, could you do a quick introduction for us, please, sir?
Sure. I'm Alexandre Rode. So I'm an analyst and a researcher, not working not on cybersecurity, but on national security, mostly counterterrorism. And I've been looking at the application of new technologies to terrorism in general, including the most recent thing with AI. And the question he asked for us, practitioners.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you all joining us today. For the nature of this conversation, I'm going to throw the first question out, but I'd like it to be pretty conversational. So once we begin discussing, please chime in with any relevant insight that you have. With that said, I'll throw the first question to Dr. Liccato. How should we design public policy on the use of AI in cybersecurity? What are the dangers that we should be aware of, and how can we mitigate them?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So with AI, and generally we're talking about generative AI, right? AI is, of course, much bigger category than just ChatGPT and related technologies. But something that we always have to be aware of is the possibility of hallucination, right? And this is something that is always going to be the case. Whenever you have a generative AI system that contains a statistical element, if it has limited compute time, limited access to information, it always has the possibility of generating hallucinations. So this can manifest in all kinds of ways, well studied, well known at this point, but this is something that we should always be aware of whenever we use AI in a cybersecurity capacity. The second And this is less well known, but something called open texturedness. So essentially, whenever you have to interpret rules, whether they're policy or access rules or laws or something else, they're going to contain some element of ambiguity in the terminology. There's going to be some terms or some concepts that there are different ways to interpret it, and those interpretations can lead to disagreements, loopholes, things like that, right? That ambiguity is a feature, not a bug. It's again something that's always going to exist. It's a fundamental property of laws and rules in general. So it's another thing that we can't ignore, and it's a problem that we need to be aware of, especially given that cybersecurity is very rule driven, right? We have policies, access rules, right? Things like that. So AI is always going to face that problem, and humans as well.
Dr. Licata, back to you, or gentlemen, if anybody else has anything else to throw in, and I'm going to do my best not to interject too much. The folks are here to hear the you all this morning, the specialists, but pulling at that same thread when you're thinking contextual and ambiguity. Of course, there's ambiguity within technical language, but also we're talking about public policy here today. So cultural ambiguity in the context of folks in Europe compared to folks in the United States. Pull at that thread a little bit for me, if you all could. How do we mitigate that within terms of technology, as Dr. Licata? Can we?
I can start. So in law, we kind of understand that different ways of interpreting, rules, guidelines, commands are just part of the nature of legal practice, right? And so whenever there's a disagreement about how some rule is to be interpreted, there's some resolution process. Maybe it makes it to court, and maybe it's adjudicated after it's conflicted, right? And so there are processes in place for that. When it comes to cybersecurity, though, you often have to make some decision about how a rule should be interpreted on the spot, right? And I think that's how do you make sure that an AI can properly interpret a rule, as accurately as possible, or as correctly, or as least controversially as possible, given that it might only have microseconds to do that, right? That's something that I think we don't pay that much attention to in AI and cybersecurity practice these days, but it is something that we are increasingly becoming aware is a problem.
Yeah, so I was wondering if there is a more technical answer to this question. So is it possible that we want models, LLM or whatever, to be more to explain what they are doing, so to have some kind of like formal explanation of their use? Is it something that is interesting for low people or something like that? So, and also, does it make sense to develop tools that try to certify or to check answers given by AI decisions? So is it something interesting or not? That I don't know. So I have more questions than answer, but I'm interested by your answer about that.
Yeah, I think so. Whenever we're talking about legal interpretation, we end up in this area where it's hard to say there's one correct answer, because the answer that ends up being correct is the one that is accepted. And often determining whether one answer should be accepted in the legal arena is it's not like a mathematical, there's a proof of it, right? And here's the correct answer. Instead, it's a dialogical process where people exchange arguments about why we should interpret it one way or another way, right? And then that process of argumentation and communication ends up kind of reaching a consensus, right? In the ideal case, we don't always agree, obviously, in politics.
Yes, but sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, because when you're teaching computer science, what you're doing first is to try to teach to the student the way to specify what a tool, what a program has to do. Okay, to specify more formally, maybe more or less. But you have to specify something, and then you have to program a tool that is correct with respect to this specification. So what is the specification of an AI tool? I don't know. So that's why I was wondering whether it could be interesting first to specify what these AI tools are doing, so that we can maybe have implementation that are related to some specification. Otherwise, I don't know what you can do without such a work on specification. So I don't know if you see what I mean. But
yeah, that's a great point. There are a couple ways to try to turn this into something that can be made into an objective criterion that could be put in a specification. One that I favor is something that kind of simulates that dialogical argumentative exchange, right? So we know that if we know that the stakeholders for a security policy are going to be the company and maybe the users and whatever, right? And then one criterion we can say is that the interpretation that the AI should favor is the one that it thinks in the moment is going to be most likely accepted by the stakeholders, right? So there's got to be some way to turn that into an objective measure, maybe based on historical knowledge about how similar situations have been interpreted in the past and so on, right? Another would be if we could simulate the argumentative process and say, okay, I've got two ways to interpret this rule. What would an argumentative exchange between those two positions look like, and how would that be resolved in the end, right? You maybe simulate that on the spot. These are sort of ideals because if we have limited computation time, we can't do all of that, of course, but it at least gives us the direction that our specifications can point towards.
Might be an interesting segue into the next question. Actually, it's also, Dr. Licata, you're talking about the contextualization of AI making a decision in the moment, but bring it back to that broader contextualization of legal system versus legal system policy making versus policy making. These are arguments that are happening in real time in both of our societies right now. But how do we know whether policies and regulations cross the line from being helpful to stifling progress? So in those scenarios that you gentlemen just laid out, that ability of AI to think in real time, if we're putting parameters around what those or if we're controlling what those operational parameters are for the sake of safety, or for the sake of being able to determine processes behind why decisions were made, at what point do we put so much on it that it stifles the innovation? And how would policymakers who aren't lay people in the technology, how would they go about thinking about this and conceptualizing it? That's something you guys.
I don't know really what to say. So
these of course aren't interesting or aren't easy questions. So even within your own context, what's going on over in Paris, what's going on here in the States, in the policymaking process, if you've seen examples there, feel free to bring those forward, because there might not be a best answer at this point. I'd really just like to compare and contrast a little bit of how this thought process is playing out before our eyes.
I can try to have a sort of naive and non-technical answer to that. The question we face when you talk about AI in the national security world is mostly what kind of use haven't we thought about and could be used by someone who would be an adversary of that. A lot of the AI tools we saw being used by either terrorists or criminals weren't built to be used that way, but they find they find contact with one of the special projects, were able to help in that way, and trying to prevent that kind of special use in a specific context with a specific mean is always hard to kind of figure out. We saw, I think the most known cases of kind of surprising use of AI was the use of replica in 2023 by Chahil in the UK, where he was in contact with a chatbot, he became enamored with the chatbot, decided to impress the chatbot, was responding to his intake, and decided to do that to try to commit a murder. He had a plan that he discussed for a long time with the chatbot, trying to organize the assassination of Queen Elizabeth. He was arrested in front of Windsor Palace with a crossbow. All of it had been planned while discussing with the chatbot in order to impress the chatbot, which was again something we wouldn't really plan for. So we see that number of application of AI are hard to predict. It's a new technology for us, at least as non-technical people and people who have to deal with the the use of it, and trying to use policy to kind of reduce it is first difficult because there is a degree of uncertainty, and the second part because most of the people working in the policy or trying to counter it are not technically trained to do that.
Any other contributing thoughts?
I'll say that one thing that makes this so difficult is because even if we do come up with a dividing line, right? Let's say, okay, let's talk about AI regulation, right? We want to regulate it so that researchers are not held back, that we can continue to innovate at the pace we have been, right? But on the other hand, we want to place limits or at least slow down the use of AI for the spreading of myths and disinformation, for example, right? Well, let's say that was the line we wanted to draw. How can we actually practically do that, right? This is not like regulating physical weapons where we can, prevent physical access to them, because once a language model is available, pretty much anybody with a computer can download it and run it. So I don't know. There's a sense in which it's almost just a thought experiment. We can say what the regulations should be, but it's not implementable. That's why this is so difficult to answer.
No, and I largely agree. And it brings up another important question. We'll transition there. It's a similar problem that I believe policymakers are going to have. How do policymakers balance security and excuse me, my phone decided to shut down where I have the questions written. Balance privacy versus security without stifling innovation? It's once again, what do you do?
It's been an ongoing debate for a long time. I don't have a clear answer for that. I mean, the big case for us was the San Bernardino shooting in 2015. The question of can we get into the shooter iPhone? What should be done about that? We haven't really solved that questions. Guidelines really change according to country. A lot of the technology is American, which creates some difficulties too. So it's an extremely hard question.
Yeah.
Have you had? I'm sorry. I'll just ask you guys. Actually, have you had similar situations to the Apple iPhone? Because we had the Apple versus FBI situation here, right? Have you had similar things be repeated in France over there?
Not really, to be honest. Most of the technology we had to work on talking about the Paris attack in 2015 or something like that, were American technology. And to be honest, having talked to the investigator who worked the cases, we were really happy with the coordination they had with foreign partners. So it really made a difference. I don't have any example of people not being able to access devices for investigation after attacks. What we have, I think, is stronger regulation on privacy, which kind of makes more difficult to detect some of the behaviors. Once again, we are lucky. I mean, I think most of the Western allies, to be honest, to have stronger capability in the US, who allows for detections and kind of pre-warning of potential attacks or potential assailant in different countries. Having worked in Western Europe or the Balkans, I've seen regular cases of the FBI calling in saying, we have noticed that kind of cyber activity. I think you should be looking into that and be able to prevent further attack to take place.
So our next question, gentlemen, I want to transition a little bit into an emerging technology that's been mentioned briefly a couple times today, and think about it in the context of cybersecurity and public policy. With the advancements of quantum coming, how will that impact cyber defense? What should nations start doing now to be prepared?
I think people must start to integrate post-quantum algorithm, cryptographic algorithm in their system. That's the first step, of course.
Even at the operational level, for example, one of the things the state of Florida has done here in the United States through Cyber Florida is spend public funds to advance training to relevant parties in public infrastructure, particularly in public government. Is there an avenue there, or right now is the technology too ambiguous for the average non-technical user to even start wrapping their heads around it? Specifically, one of the things we've targeted is leadership capacity in these organizations. You don't have to be a technical expert in cybersecurity to be trained enough to know how to make strategic decisions about cyber. Is there an avenue there that we should be exploring for quantum as it comes online?
I'll try to answer. I don't have any technical expertise on quantum, so I won't mention that. But the issue is any kind of new emerging technology and kind of having it understood by a non-technical person is to go all of the chain. Like we have to start by leaders who are able to understand what are the possibilities and try to explain to like middle manager what we can do. But once again, in national security, most of the cases we have to face will fall down to a local police officer or local intelligence officers with limited time for training, a lot of caseload to work on, and often not the time to understand what the technology is about. So education is definitely an issue. It should be concerning, but once again, if it's a difficult subject at a highly technical level, I don't think it'd be easy to bring that back to people who are working the cases.
So to me, one of the most impact in cyber defense is this scenario called the harvest now and decrypt later. So in quantum, so basically now today, governments or hackers can already save secret encrypted messages all around the world, and probably their goal is to read this message in the future. So when quantum computer will be ready for that. So I don't know what we can do against this problem right now. So it's this technology is could be very impressive in the next future. So it's going to be probably it's going to have a lot of impact.
So with that, I'll bring it back to a new technology that's here now and is not so ambiguous at this moment to the average layperson, and that is cryptocurrencies. What is the best approach for international regulation of cryptocurrencies, and more specifically to address traceability issues?
So maybe I can take this one. So first it's very good to recall that cryptocurrencies are decentralized by design, right? So they operate across borders and are not controlled by any country. And so what is the point here is that in public blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum, of course, all transactions are recorded openly. Okay, everybody can see the transaction. But criminals use technologies like mixers or tumblers or complex transaction patterns to hide the money flow. So blockchain also present very strong challenges especially in tracing transaction to prevent money laundering and illegal activities. So it's a difficult problem. So I don't know exactly. Well, so of course some countries have already designed tools to track transaction in blockchains, but most of these tools are made in the United States, and it's. I presume that it's going to be the use of blockchain in the future of cryptocurrency is going to be worse in the future. So yes, it's definitely going to be a problem for regulation. So I don't know exactly how to address this traceability issue, but it's an important problem. Yeah.
I won't cut anybody else off that wants to contribute, but the original question imposed sense of international cooperation, but even within your own individual countries, what is the current stance of public policy towards, once again, that battle between security and not stifling innovation? What has France done compared to the United States?
Well, so in Europe there is this regulation, the MiCA regulation, which introduces some obligations for stable coins, for instance, or for exchanges like Well, so yes, and what the MiCA regulation is doing is try to improve transparency, to prevent abuse, and we have an extension of that through that regulation, the MiCA 2 regulation, which address DeFi, the decentralized finance, and NFT. So, well, these two regulations try to improve anti-money laundering, and transaction traceability. So that's basically the most the two regulations that we have.
Yeah, for us, of course, regulation has been slow and inconsistent, right? There was the AI executive order a couple of years ago, but that got rescinded by the Trump administration and not yet clearly replaced. Then there was a budget fight where they tried to make it so that states were not allowed to do to pass any AI regulations for 10 years or something like that, and it looks like that's not going to go through, at least for now. So. Yeah, right now there's no clear guidance on what regulation for AI is going to look like. There are attempts to do industry-specific, not official regulation, but creating standards, right? There's ISO 42001 and things like that. But uptake on that, in my opinion, has been very slow as well. So it doesn't look like there's any serious efforts for regulating the industry yet.
Would you all say, representing two different universities, research universities, that in this vacuum, especially the vacuum that exists in the United States, where there's not regulatory guidance yet and doesn't seem to be only on the horizon around specifically AI, as Dr. Liccardo spoke to, but also some of these emerging technologies like quantum computing and even to some extent cryptocurrency, is there a role for the universities to play in this vacuum? At least as far as in determining best practices and providing resources, knowledge resources to industry and society in general?
I think that's a great question. I think the answer is absolutely yes. Here at University of South Florida, we've had this policy where we're trying to be AI first, right? And that doesn't mean that force AI into everybody's lives, whether they like it or not, right? It just means that we're not going to take the extreme opposite stance where we ban all AI from all classes by default and then require justification for its use, right? We are trying to take an approach where we are providing resources to the faculty, and not only in terms of hardware capabilities, but also expertise, which is part of what we're going to be able to provide with the new AI college that's launching. But policy-wise, I think we've tried to kind of take a leadership role where we show people that, yes, this change is happening very rapidly, but ignoring it is going to lead to potentially more problems than not ignoring it. So
yes, rapidly is the word. So it's very, this change is very rapid. But so at university, we have to face this AI problem every day now. So for instance, if you want to evaluate students, it's becoming almost impossible to give them some project to do at home. Otherwise, you're just going to look at ChatGPT solutions. So, but I agree that you don't want to just to say no, don't use this kind of technology. It would be very stupid, of course. But I think that nobody has the good answer to that. So.
Yeah, we've in my classes I found myself drawing a sharper separation between the formative assessments and the summative assessments, right? So like every week now I have the in-person quizzes, no AI allowed, no only pen and paper, but then the homework assignments, where previously that was a big part of their grade, now it's a tiny part of their grade. It's kind of just if they choose to do it and and they understand that doing it right and not just using ChatGPT to do the homework for them is going to make them do better on the quizzes.
Yeah.
But if they choose not to, and they choose to just let the AI do their work, and then they're going to learn the hard way, right? But I allow them that option now.
Speaking to the how can universities be a resource to larger society in this vacuum, especially here in the States, Dr. Licata, all of you gentlemen brought up some very interesting points there that we at Cyber Florida have even seen transition out of the academy and into the workaday world, if you will. Specifically with local governments here in Florida, we've come alongside them to provide resources to their leadership to do just what John just mentioned, to make them understand that AI specifically is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So you need to know how to incorporate this into your working world to avoid even some of the same issues that we see out of students that want to take a shortcut using the technology in that way. So but we at Cyber Florida, which is part of the University of South Florida, have met that goal head on. And I think that's one of the areas where our research universities can really aid society in this period of transition. All right. If there's no other thoughts, gentlemen, I have one other question for you, but any other closing thoughts on that topic?
I think universities are a better place to do the level of education we need on that, to do research on the national security aspect. We have a number of use of AI and mostly LLMs regarding terrorism activity. We saw what happened in Vegas, we saw what happened in Finland about 2 months ago. Once again, for the average police officer who show up to that place, it seems it is still an abstract subject. So having someone who is able to kind of educate, explain, put into practice that kind of effect would be a great help for, I think, the national security effort in general, both in France and the US.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Instead of saying, okay, let's rush to have this heavy top-down regulation that is sort of one size fits all. Instead, we let the individual universities, try out different policies for enforcement and see what works, and then eventually that'll start turning into common patterns that we realize works, and then maybe that can lead to regulation sort of bottom up, right? But I think maybe that's the way to go. It's certainly what's already happening.
It does appear to be what's happening in the vacuum, and I think it might ultimately, with any kind of emerging technology, might be the best way to go to stop stifling innovation. Closing question for you, gentlemen. Obviously, between our nations, there's great collaboration, on international crime investigations. One of the things we see a lot here in the States, as I'm sure you guys do in Europe, individuals that have fallen victim to cybercrime, and there's very little you can do to make the person whole because the crime is usually originating in areas of the world that are not in friendly cooperation with us. Using AI, using these emerging technologies we've talked about today, are there ways, are there ideas, are there hypotheses about how technology in the future can aid international collaboration more, specifically around finding ways to make cyber victims whole? Do you gentlemen see any avenues in the future that are coming that would be exciting about, or exciting as far as helping international law enforcement cooperate with each other to do that?
I think two straight away. First, it starts with education and trying to educate law enforcement personnel about AI possibilities. It's a world who's far away from the daily routine. They need more information about the subject. And I think 10 years ago, having the first victim of cybercrime arriving at the station, it was always difficult to understand the extent of it, the place, the organizations, kind of website that they were on at the time. AI is going to be another challenge for law enforcement personnel on the lower level, and we need to be able to help educate them. The other thing was made easier is translation for sure. They use an AI in translating and making contact easier between law enforcement. Will probably reduce the need for special units specialized in cooperation, just because we lose that kind of language issue. So there's a number of things that could be really useful. I think there's a need for that, both in the kind of high aspect of the situation, such as counterterrorism, to lower crime, which both affect both of our countries.
I know the process of making whole again is made more complicated when, like if you want to reverse financial transactions that were done over blockchain or something like that, right? Which I assume is difficult to do. That's not my area of expertise, but I don't know if there's been any innovations made with respect to that problem, but that definitely makes it difficult.
Yeah, so I don't know. So it's so you're talking about if AI can help collaboration and so on. So on it, but to me, it's very important that the United States and Europe talk together. So that there could be some conference, academic conference organized on that kind of subject. I mean, I'm not that much interested by the tool first, about AI, whatever, but people need to talk and to exchange their ideas and so on. So that's more important than just using AI or whatever.
So, gentlemen, that was the last scripted question I had for you all. What I think I'm hearing today is there are no easy answers to these questions, and that's why we're discussing them today. Innovation is happening so rapidly, and public policy tries to keep up. And even aside from public policy, organizational policy, especially with these emerging technologies. So hearing your insights today, kind of the state of the world, where it's at, and the things that people need to be thinking about, need to be concerned about as they search for answers for these questions has been very valuable. I want to thank all of you for taking some time today with us. I know you're all three very busy. It was a fascinating conversation. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Jim Cardozo, the Senior Director of GNSI, for some closing remarks. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I found that I was just muted for all that and speaking to Ghost. So let me go over this again quickly. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I do need to say thank you actually verbally instead of just mime. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained additional insight into the modern cybersecurity challenges. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. These issues are not going to solve themselves. They require and informed policymakers, but also informed users of technology, cyberspace, and AI tools. I want to thank our panelists for their time and expertise. Thank the organizations that partnered with us, the University of Paris-Saclay, the University of South Florida's Bellini College of Artificial Intelligence, Cybersecurity and Computing, and also the Florida Center for Cybersecurity, aka Cyber Florida. If you'd like to review today's forum, it'll be posted to our website and also our YouTube page. You can review it, or also, even better yet, let friends and colleagues know that it happened so they can watch this, learn about this, and build their own awareness of those cybersecurity risks and threats out there. Beyond that, though, thank you for your time today. Stay safe out there in Cyberland, and have a great day.